Welcome, everyone. I'm Barbara Kaufman, Executive Vice President and COO at Newark Regional Business Partnership, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you today for our webinar on well-being and COVID-19. I'm very excited to hear from our presenter today because I think this topic is always relevant, but particularly so in the environment that we face today as we think about how to make our workplaces ones where we can return safely. Before we begin, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our upcoming webinars and programs, share them with you, and encourage you not only to sign up yourselves, but also to share the announcements with others and encourage people, post on social media to join us. Once a week, we have a happy hour on Thursday nights, and tomorrow is a very special one. For those who have been fans of Nico Kitchen and Bar, which is now closed because of COVID, with the NJ Pack being closed, the team from Nico will be with us and will be sharing how to make one of their signature and very favorite dishes, which is crispy Brussels sprouts. So whet your appetite and learn how to make, for anybody that thinks that they don't like Brussels sprouts, this is an opportunity to find out that they really can be quite good with the Nico recipe. So this is your one-time opportunity to learn how to make them. They'll also be sharing a signature cocktail, and we're going to be opening up and encouraging everybody to talk about what they do and to do networking in a more relaxed environment. So bring your drink and join us. We'll be announcing next week's happy hour guest shortly. I'm hoping to finalize that a little bit later this afternoon. Next week also, on Tuesday, we will hear from the law firm Lewis Brisbois, and they're going to be sharing some aspects of the CARES Act that could be helpful in reducing federal taxes. So that's one you're sure to want to join. And we have a special guest for our NRBP Nexus. This week we launched, in fact yesterday, we launched the reformatted version of Nexus, which is a networking group, and we are inviting a guest networker every week. And we were delighted this week to have Michael Meyer, who is a principal with the Hugo New Corporation, and he was talking about their Kearney Point development. In fact, their building is well certified, Erica. So he was talking about some of the aspects of the building that allow for a more pleasant experience for their co-working tenants. Next Tuesday, we're going to hear or be able to network with Peter Bronsnick, who is a principal with SJP Properties. They own and manage a large number of buildings around the state, in fact, beyond the state, and you may very well be in a building that's managed or owned by SJP. So this is a great opportunity to be able to virtually meet Peter and talk about future opportunities to work there with SJP. And then the following week, we're going to be conversing with Adina Bio, who you may have heard if you attended our real estate market forecast in March. And Adina is developing a residential property on Broad Street that includes an IHOP restaurant and her brand restaurant, Cornbread. There'll be 2 restaurants there. She has achieved a remarkable 55% affordable housing. So this is an opportunity to talk with Adina about how she's done it and future possible work with Adina Bio and Company. So please check the website, watch your emails, and be in touch with us if you have ideas for programs or ways that you would like to engage. What we'll do today is that I'm going to turn it over to Erica momentarily. Erica will deliver her presentation. I'm going to be monitoring questions and mostly holding questions to the end. If there's anything that needs to come in earlier than that, I will ask it. And then at the end, I'll field the questions. And a little bit before 3, I'll turn it over to our President and CEO, Chip Halleck, to close the program. If there's anything that you want to ask about, please do put that in the question box. One question that we always get is whether the presentation will be available after this is over, and the answer is yes, it will. We will have a PDF available, and that will be attached to your thank you email. So please make sure you open your thank you email and also take our survey. We really do rely on your opinion for what we should or shouldn't be doing going forward. If you have specific ideas for topics, or if you'd like to co-present with us the way that where Malcolm is doing today, please contact me. I'd love to hear what your topic ideas are and how we might work together. So with that, I am going to turn off my camera and turn to Erica, and I'll be back when Erica concludes. Thank you.
Hello, as Barbara said, my name is Erica Godun. I am the Director of Regional Operations for Ware Malcolm and the East Region. I take care of the 2 offices in New Jersey and our office in New York City as under my region. My primary focus as an architect has always been in interiors. So I've been very focused on the sustainability movement over the years, heavy involvement in LEED way back when that started, and more involvement with WELL and material transparency as we've been moving forward. As you can see, I'm a LEED AP as well as a WELL AP. So I have both accreditations right now. Ware Malcolm is an architecture and interior design firm that was founded 48 years ago in Irvine, California. Since then, we've expanded across the country, and including Canada and Mexico, so across North America, to 24 offices. And we have a variety of things that we're now doing, including the architecture and interior design. We wrap in branding, civil engineering, and as I mentioned previously, sustainable design. We have 2 offices that are local in New Jersey. One's in Princeton, and the other one is in Newark. We were very excited to move to Newark in just this past October. We moved into the Ironside building, and as I was telling Barbara earlier, we were looking forward to being able to experience the outdoor spaces that the building provides and the park next door. It's right near the Prudential Center, for those who don't know specifically in that area. But unfortunately, we've been off-site since March, where I just heard that Ironside will be opening up. Edison Properties is going to get us back in soon, and we're looking forward to getting back to our new home. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the WELL building standard and wellness in the workplace that has become a focus of many business leaders, especially due to current events. I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the standard and hit some key points about how some of the concepts can be applied to any work setting. I understand we have a larger group of participants from the real estate field, and this system really is for new construction and major renovations. But what I will be hitting, especially with the COVID-19 wrap-in, are things that people can apply to any business or any location with potentially just policy changes or minor modifications. The WELL Building Standard was launched in 2014 as a certification system that would focus on the people in the buildings. Some of you might be more familiar with the LEED certification system. It's an older system. It's been around for, I think, about 20 years now, and it focuses primarily on sustainability in construction. So getting materials that are good for the environment, good sourcing, things like that, but it's really focused on the building materials, the construction of the place, and general operations. The WELL system is more focused on the people. It includes, obviously, wellness and health items, and also involves things like civic engagement and social responsibility, wrapping in policies for company policies on improving the health and well-being of their employees. Especially, this system and wellness in general was really accelerating in the building industry more recently as people became more focused on wellness in general. And then with our current health crisis going on, suddenly well is all anybody wants to talk about, which is how I ended up giving you this presentation. Well version 1 is still the current version of Well. Version 2 is currently in pilot. It was supposed to be released from pilot and voted on at the beginning of March, but the Well people decided to pull that launch in order to review the Well system and see if there are any things that they could incorporate or expand to target current events and current concerns related to pathogens and virus spreading, things like that. So they are doing a lot of research right now. They have a task force working on, a global task force working on ideas related to Well and in general wellness for everybody in the environment. And you can find a lot of that on their website. And they just released a paper that aligns the strategies in Well with the fight against COVID-19. So I'd encourage you to check that out on your website if that's something that, on their website, if that's something that interests you. For today, I'm going to use version 2 as the guideline for reviewing the Well system because it is that close to release. And as soon as things settle down a bit, I expect it to be the primary idea going forward. Right now, if you do want to register a project for Well, you can register with for the pilot in version 2 if you want to. What you're looking at on the screen right now are the 10 concepts of Well. Several things should be familiar to you from potentially other building rating systems or just life in general related to air and water, light, things like that. What you'll see here is that expansion that I was talking about that really focuses on the people and expanding outside of your specific workplace into the world in general for things like mind and community. The first concept of air is related to primarily indoor air quality. There's measurements and tracking that are throughout the Well system. You need to find out what potential problems are before you can fix them, true of anything. And then as far as Well is concerned, once you get Well certification, you still need to report certain data back to Well in order to maintain your certification so that you don't just kind of push it through for the initial review and then things degrade after that. One of those things is air quality. There's you're supposed to move forward with figuring out what the current air quality is, improving it with filtration and awareness. And then something specifically related to COVID-19 is, I'm sure you've all been hearing about how being outside is the way to mitigate virus spread, because outside air patterns and things like that really help dilute any contaminants in the air. And the same thing goes for your indoor environment. So one of the things that you can do right now is if your space has operable windows, if you open the windows, then you get better airflow through the building. If you can't open the windows, most mechanical systems, I should say all mechanical systems have some form of outside air coming in. A lot of them that can be increased. You just need to check with your building maintenance people and make sure that the system can handle it. Next category of water. I'm going to touch very lightly on hand washing because that's something that I think we've probably heard way too much about. Obviously, hand washing is important, and an interesting thing to note that Well prioritizes paper towels or towels for hand drying over air drying. So a long time, everybody was talking about air dryers, save the environment, save the trees. Now we're kind of going back the other way because that does actually limit contaminants going from one place to the other rather than the hot air blowing them around. Another extreme focus of Well is drinking water promotion. As anyone who has ever started a new wellness program, exercise program, or diet, you probably realize that the first thing that anyone tells you to do is drink lots of water. And when you realize how much water you're supposed to drink, you also realize how that is so much less than what you are currently drinking. So part of Well is drinking water promotion, and this is both making drinking water accessible, but there's also the possibility of making the drinking water tasty so that people really want to drink it. The second part of water for well has to do with moisture management. No one wants mold growing anywhere, bad for your health. And there are various strategies within well to mitigate mitigate water where it shouldn't be. Nourishment is one of those things in well that is more about the people and about office and company policy than it is about the actual construction. It's highly encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables, but not only is it encouraged, should you be telling your employees to be eating fruits and vegetables, but it actually suggests providing fruits and vegetables, providing places to store fruits and vegetables. I'm not sure where this is going in the current environment with the recent direction to not have shared food in any office environment, but as long-term policy, obviously good food is better, and it does strengthen your immune system, so that can keep people from getting sick. But other interesting things related to the nourishment is if there is a cafe or cafeteria that's part of the well project, is putting forward healthy options. So advertising can only be for healthy options. The primary thing is you need to have a certain number of healthy options compared to unhealthy options. Things like that are actually really interesting. And at this point, if you can't implement something like that because of other restrictions, it's just making the employees aware of what they should be eating and how they should be consuming food and looking at food is part of the whole concept of well. Everyone knows daylight makes people happy. There's always a fight for who can sit closest to the windows. In the past, extended period of time, there's been a big move to take offices off the windows, put them internal, give the windows to the people sitting in the workstations who've been in the offices more, or who are in the offices more. And that's definitely continued through with well. There's also the added overlay of tracking circadian rhythms and trying to match the lighting in any space to the body's rhythms and reactions to light. Having more daylight, even if you can't get actual daylight, having light that is closer to the daylighting to promote people to be paying better attention and better able to focus while they're in the office, and then going off site and not having a big change between them, letting people know what appropriate light levels are, and electric light strategies to, as I mentioned, to balance out the lighting. What we've got now is a lot of people are working from home, and they're probably working in their living rooms like I am, or potentially their kitchens. A lot of daylighting going on there. People aren't going to be happy to go back to, their basement office or the cell buried in the middle of a larger floor space. So that's something to consider as people start moving back to their offices. Movement is related to promoting active living in home and in the office. So active buildings, making the stair a primary focus when people come into a building where they don't go directly to the elevators, they choose the stairs. This is something that is likely to become something that people are promoting even more right now, because no one wants to get in a crowded elevator. So there's going to be restrictions on elevator use due to COVID-19 and how many people can get in there. And if you don't want to wait, you can go up and down the stairs. So all those back building stairs that no one wanted to go into probably could get a nice paint job and some upgraded lighting, and people will start using them more. I can't remember what seminar I was listening to more recently, but there was a conversation about up to potentially the 5th floor, having people walking up and down the stairs. I'm sure I'm willing to walk up to the 5th floor, but it is something that can be encouraged, and it definitely ties into the movement category for well. Ergonomics, another important part of Ergonomics is another important part of well. It has to do with obviously where you're sitting and how your workspace is set up, but also providing things like sit-stand desks so that people are active during the day, even if they have to stay at their desk. And also lighting that allows you to read things properly so that you're not straining your eyes. I have to say, as I get older and I need brighter lights to see things, I'm sure I'm not the only one with that. So that kind of ergonomics, focus on the lighting, and also at this point, with a lot of people working from home, taking those same ergonomic guidelines and giving them to your employees so that they understand how they should set up their desk at home. I know that there's been innumerable complaints about desk chairs. No one intended to sit at their in the kitchen table for extended periods of time working. And since that's where we are now, there's been a lot of interest in desk chairs. I know early on you couldn't find a desk chair, or it would take 6 weeks to show up, but that's one of those things that, our new normal includes making sure that you have a home environment that is ergonomically able to support you, as well as your work environment. Other things related to the movement section is active commuting. It does encourage using public transportation. Again, we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully short term with the CDC guidelines of not taking public transportation right now or limiting it. But it's definitely something to consider, and being able to walk or bike to work. So when you're looking for a potential new workplace for your office for a move, considering how many of your employees might be able to get there without using even public transportation, but not driving, where they could bike or walk, that will encourage movement, as well as potentially cutting down on costs for people getting to the office. Thermal comfort is an old one. Anyone who runs an office or manages an office is used to continually fielding complaints about whether people are hot or cold. And even people sitting right next to each other, someone can be hot and someone can be cold. Having the ability to adjust your local temperature is critical to being comfortable, and if you're not complaining, you can be working. So how many hours get wasted with people complaining? However, it's not always possible to make those adjustments because, as I said, sometimes people sitting right next to each other are just different, feel differently, react to the environment differently. So one of the things is being able to have people move around the space. This applies to several of the categories where you can move around to make the environment that you're in more comfortable for yourself. And that's related to whether you need to have more privacy, or you're cold and you want to move to another desk that might be in a warmer place in the building. But that movement, and that ties again back into the movement category. If you move around and you're not just tied to your desk, one specific location all the time, then you have the ability to adjust your thermal comfort, as well as several other things. A lot of the WELL concepts are all tied together. It's all about physical health and mental well-being, and those things tend to move together. Again, we'll see where we are right now, and limiting movement, people wearing masks when they're moving around in the office, and we'll see how things progress. But one thing that is important right now is maintaining humidity control, because that does limit the growth of pathogens. And again, people are much more comfortable if humidity is in the right temperature range, or in the right range. I don't know how many of you are currently located in New Jersey. I suspect a few of you are. That we're having a wonderful thunderstorm, humid day, and I know I was much more comfortable yesterday when we had nice sun and cooler weather than I am today, and it definitely does impact your ability to focus on your work and not have to keep getting up and be more comfortable somewhere else. Acoustics is a very critical item for being able to, again, focus on your work. WELL has you do tests to check the acoustics in various places. You're looking for the intrusion of outside noise, as well as transfer between internal spaces. If you can understand where the problem areas might be when you're designing a space, you can design spaces that maybe are more active and loud, where there might be a lot of outdoor noise. If you have a space that's next to a playground, you might want to have the cafe or a more informal meeting area closer to that side of the building, and the more focused offices and workstations where you're not going to hear children screaming outside. I have to say, I do like to listen to the kids playing outside. It definitely improves my mood, but not when I'm trying to focus on something. So that's the way, that's one of the considerations here. Something else to consider with sound and acoustics is there are always retrofit options to this. So if this is causing a problem in your space or your business, there are different ways by putting up barriers, by getting acoustic materials, by putting in a sound masking system that's kind of the low level noise that you get from, usually you get from air conditioning systems. Sometimes it's not enough to kind of, it gives you a little bit extra background noise so that you get more privacy when people are closer together, when there's at least a low level of background noise. So it's something to look into if you're having acoustic issues. Again, comfort of your employees and the people who are trying to work is paramount. And you can see in the images that we have here, the options are for privacy that you have someplace you can go where you have absolute privacy. But when you don't need to have that heads down, very quiet, you can be in a more lively environment talking to different people. And you can understand better what's going on around you and move around so that you can get to the best place for the best acoustics for whatever task that you're trying to perform at that time. Materials have been a big focus lately related to COVID-19. A lot of conversations about antimicrobial surfaces. Materials with antimicrobial characteristics may not be the best thing for actually killing germs. Most materials that have antimicrobial treatments in them, it's to preserve the material, not to, like paints have them so they don't mold on the shelf. They're not really meant to be killing viruses. But on the other end of that, if you've got materials that are easy to clean, then you have a good material, good surface that doesn't require as much effort or hazardous materials to potentially kill viruses on the surfaces. You also want to make sure that any cleaning materials are low hazard. Fighting one thing, trying to prevent one bad thing from happening by making something else bad happen is not the ideal way to make people healthier. So make sure that when you're looking at cleaning protocols, that you're looking at things that do the job they need to do with the least impact on the environment, and that includes the people in the environment. VOCs, volatile organic compounds, it's been talked about for a long time. Now it's common to find paint in stores, even the store brands that have low or no VOCs. These are things that can cause anything from irritation to illness in people if you're breathing it in. So one of the things that WELL focuses on is material transparency, knowing what's in the materials that you're installing in your space. Right now, transparency has a lot of levels, and you actually get credit for the manufacturers and the people who might be designing to the WELL standards will get credit for WELL just for having the transparency document. It can be a transparency document that says that this product is really not good for you, but the push to materials transparency is similar to what I mentioned earlier. If you know what the problem is, you can fix it. So people will find out what's in their material, manufacturers find out what's in their material, and start trying to get the bad things out of it so that the material in the end ends up healthier. So right now, there's a combination of just disclosure and also using materials that don't include any of the harmful materials in them. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the mind category. These last two that we're talking about, mind and comfort, are the ones that are really outside of the built environment. There are some things that do apply and you can use within the construction of a space or the design of a space in order to improve the comfort level or the mental health of the people within a space. But a lot of these things are also company policies and procedures. Right now, everybody is really stressed out with the whole COVID-19 thing. People react to it differently. Some people are made, it's incredible anxiety and they're non-functional. Some people it's kind of just always in the background, but there's no one that's not affected by it. So providing mental health resources to staff and having people understand what they need to know about their mental health and also about the people around them. So people get less snappish if they realize that everybody else is kind of under the same stresses, is something that can be done with internal company policies and procedures. Other things related to this is the business travel strategy in Well is if you're going to be traveling for an extended period of time, there are you need to spend a certain amount of time where you're going so you're not constantly bouncing from one place to another. And if you're going for even a really long time, that there's opportunities to have your family come visit you or have, take a break in the middle and go visit your family. Things like that, again, written to company policies helps people have a better mental health platform in order to do their jobs. Sleep support's on here also. Everyone knows if you don't get enough sleep, you're not able to focus. I will say again, for a little personal story in here, I've cut out my commute to work by working from home, and it was a 1 hour in each direction. So I've got these 2 hours a day back, and I will say I spend most of that extra time sleeping, and I am much happier for that. Another part of the MIND concept is access to nature. Biophilia is a term that's bandied about a lot. It has to do with nature, bringing nature into the built environment. So you're reflecting nature. It doesn't mean that you have to be working in the middle of a park, even though that would be really nice. But it means that maybe there's some plants in the space. Maybe there's artwork that depicts natural environments. Even looking at a picture has been shown to improve people's mood and mental stability, or help you out when you're a little stressed out, because just looking at it and imagining yourself there is something that can be done. So as I said in the beginning, some of these things can be built into your space, and some of these things you can always bring in later. If right now you have a very sterile space and people don't like it, maybe it's time to get some nice pictures, not a heavy investment. Some plants that can live indoors, that flower maybe, that will help people's mental resilience as they're moving back to the office and feeling a little bit stressed about that move, and then also just generally ongoing pleasant environment. Community is the last of the strategies that is related to social equity and civic engagement. So we've been definitely seeing a lot of civic engagement lately, and maybe not the most pleasant way, but the idea behind the community section of Well is you foster civic engagement and social equity before it explodes. So how do you take your business and engage the people in your company that are in an office space or store or wherever they're working, and have them engage with their local community, not just when they go home and whoever their neighbors are or their town, but where you're working, how do you engage with the people around you and make sure that there's connections and that everyone's invested in the local community. This also takes care of some really basic things, accessible and universal design. ADA has been out there forever, making sure that people can get to all the places that they need to get to. There's no barriers for physical handicaps or anything like that. And this is another thing related to organizational transparency is if your organization communicates a lot with your employees, they are much more likely to be happy with your company and feel more comfortable long term. You don't want to invest in training people and then have them leave because they don't like the environment. So if you're investing in these people and you're sharing and being transparent with how your organization operates and what's going on, they will be invested in you as much as you are invested in them, and that fosters people to stay longer. So related to COVID-19 and also other ongoing events, again, providing spaces for community engagement rather than having a guard at the door and no one's allowed in, having public spaces at the base of buildings where people can mingle that don't necessarily work in the building. I mentioned the Ironside building that has the park as well as its own outdoor spaces that are attached directly next to the building. Being able to get out and participate in the community is something that not only helps you become part of the community, but it also is positive for the mental and physical health of the people that work in your company. Value of better buildings. Everybody wants to know what the return on investment is. There were some studies done. These right now are a few years old. There's always things that are ongoing right now. But I don't know if any of you remember when LEED came out, again, nearly 20 years ago, but it was pretty strongly adopted by a lot of organizations and a lot of communities maybe 10 plus years ago. And it became kind of a status symbol, as in, I've got a LEED building, don't you want to come here? It was something that you could use to sell the building. So there might be some expense in putting in these positive sustainability aspects, but there was some return on investment as a differentiator between your building and other buildings. Since LEED has become so entrenched in, as I said, governments and local communities, now you need another differentiator, and WELL is potentially that differentiator. You can now say that you have a WELL building, and WELL does apply to both the building, and you can do it for interior spaces alone, and you can use this as a sales point. So that's potentially getting higher rents, or at least getting people to come to your building. And this will be a bigger impact now as people are considering where they're going back to work and where they might be in the future. And if they want to go to a building that they know has better air quality and better water quality and has incorporated things that are potentially could fight the next pandemic that we have, then that's going to make a building a lot more attractive to people and building tenants as well as the employees. Wellness also has a big impact on occupant satisfaction, and happy people work harder. There's just no way around that. If you like your company, you're going to work harder for it. And if you have a WELL building and all the educational information that kind of goes with having a WELL building, or where you're following some of the WELL concepts, people understand more about wellness, and they're more likely to take advantage of the opportunities that you're providing them. And this is the last slide, why well-being. I talked about most of these things as we were going through it. But again, employees and the people that work for your company are the most expensive part of the company, and you obviously can't run a company without them. So attracting employees and retaining them once you've trained them and invested in them is a critical factor in a successful business. And as I've shown you and talked about in all the other slides, having all these wellness options, health and well-being, where people know that you're thinking about them, that gets reciprocated in people's work ethic, working with you and wanting to stay with your company. Okay. All right, I can open it up for questions, and my contact information is on the slide that you'll be getting the presentation, but I do encourage you to look at the WELL website. It's wellcertified.com, and they've got a lot of good information about wellness in general, and all of the research that they've done for each one of these concepts is available on their website, so you can see what it is you're fighting by doing more WELL certified places and also considering the WELL concept.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, Erica. We will share that website. I think Maya will put it in the chat box, and we'll also share it in the thank you email. Now, I have a few questions and a couple of comments to ask, and I do encourage others to comment. Actually, there's a comment here, great information, many thanks, from one of the attendees. I was very, very interested in the whole concept about nature. In your opening slide, you showed the green wall. And I personally experienced being in a building with a green wall. I was at a meeting for the Dodge Foundation, and that building was designed to a very high level of sustainability. I suspect that if they built it probably about 10 years ago, but they probably would qualify for the WELL building standard because of all the features that they put in. And I remember thinking after about an hour of a meeting, it was the first time that I remember sitting in a conference room where I wasn't feeling tired, and I attributed that to the green wall. So I think that the whole idea of bringing plants and nature into the space, aside from establishing a sense of calm, also has a physical benefit. One question I have for you, though, on the moisture level, and that is that I find that, and actually I've heard that if the atmosphere is too dry, that it actually causes your skin to break, and when your skin breaks, you're more susceptible to infection. So I wondered about whether if the atmosphere is really dry, if there could be greater, if there's some theory about whether there's greater spread of the infection because of the passages in your nose allowing the virus to enter.
Well, I don't have any medical training, so I can't really speak to whether that would be, cause you more problems. But what I can say about moisture control is it is control. It's not about making a space with as low humidity as possible or no humidity, at least not a normal active space. It's about keeping it in the levels that are both comfortable for people and and are not comfortable for mold to grow. So there's a range in there where you would be keeping it. So it's about controllability and being able to adjust the moisture control and the humidity, not just get it all out. I mean, there are some environments where things need to be very dry, but those aren't usually places where people are occupying. We do need a certain amount of humidity to be comfortable, just not as much as today in a thunderstorm.
Yeah. We have a question from our attendees. Can a tenant who wants to get their space well certified do so if they are in a building owned by a landlord who doesn't have the base building certified?
Yes. So you can do well just for the interior environment. If you have any experience with any other building systems, it's the same for all of them. The more things you can control, the easier it is to get higher levels of certification. Just because there are certain things that you can't do if you're just a tenant in the building, but it's intended for interior environments as well, where they know that you're not going to be able to control the building. You would, if you're going for certification, you need to be doing depending on the space, you probably need to be doing a pretty extensive fit out of the interior environment to get certification, but you do not have to have control of building systems in order to become certified.
Okay, great, thank you. One of the things that came up yesterday in conversation with Michael Meyer at Kearney Point, as I mentioned, Kearney Point has achieved WELL certification. One of the things that was discussed was that as people start to come back, if they're doing some kind of hybrid or if they're doing all of their work at home, they may find that they can't adapt the work environment sufficiently, ergonomically, whatever, and that they need a place that's local to be able to go a couple of days a week, and a co-working space can be the perfect environment for that. So I wondered what your thoughts are on whether co-working spaces can be adapted to be. I would think the same principles apply, but I just wanted to get some thoughts from you on the idea that there could be local places for people to go that would not be their home, but also not their office.
Okay. Well, again, specifically for WELL certification, you can get any space WELL certified. So those principles can be applied to any space. That's pretty much any space. There's some parameters, but generally any space that you'd be working can be WELL certified. But any space that you're going to can have some of the principles applied to it. I think I've been hearing, again, we're kind of at the beginning of how things are going to go back, how we're going to go back. But I have been hearing that satellite offices might become the norm, so people don't have to go, if they were working in New York City and they live somewhere in New Jersey, that maybe they don't go into New York City very often, and then there are going to be smaller satellite offices, and that might be the co-working spaces. The issue with co-working spaces is they were meant to be collaborative, open spaces, and right now everyone's being told to stay away from each other. So somehow we're going to have to come up with that mix of having a satellite space where you can just pop in and feeling safe in that space. And that's what a lot of the co-working spaces are looking at right now.
As a plug for one of our members, Third Space is a co-working space that opened fairly recently in the Ironbound. And I talked to the manager, and Kenny said that they've adapted in several ways for having, and actually they've had people in the space the entire time, the essential businesses that have had to come in. But they put up mirrors so that if you're walking down a corridor and you're about to turn a corner, you can see if anybody else is coming and be able to have your social distance. They also changed all of their entries and exits from the restrooms to hands-free so that you don't need to turn a knob. And they just redesigned their communal spaces so that there are established stations that are spread out and people aren't going to be seated next to each other. And where they could, they moved people into private spaces. In fact, Kearney Point said the same thing, that's what they had done. Where it was possible, they were moving people who had been in open spaces into private spaces to be able to follow guidelines and also give people comfort. So I think that's very, very possible. There could be satellites. Okay. We're not getting a whole lot of questions from the audience. I hope some people will think of something that they would like to ask. Please use the question box or use the chat box to let us know if there's something that you would like to bring up. And either there or as follow-up, let us know if there are other aspects of design that you'd like us to talk about, other topics that are of interest to you. We don't want to overburden you with webinars, but at the same time, we want to be able to showcase our members and provide valuable information. Erica, I do have another question, and that is in terms of exercise and staircases that I think, for those of us that used to go to the gym that miss it, the staircase is a wonderful adaptation of a Stairmaster. So anybody that was doing the stair climber, you've got a built-in Stairmaster right there. And if you get too tired, you can hop off and get the elevator, but it is a good way to get exercise. I wondered if there are any principles in WELL that are exercises that you can do at your desk. I thought I heard you mentioning standing up and sitting down, but I wondered whether there are any guidelines regarding different things you can do. I once read that you could push yourself away from your desk and do that as an arm exercise, but I wondered if you'd heard of anything.
There aren't a lot of specifics like that, as in like specific exercise, but WELL does include things. The sitting and standing that I was mentioning, one of the WELL strategies is providing sit-stand desks. So you can sit at your desk and then you can push a button and raise it so that you're standing and so you're not sedentary the whole time. There's also ways to comply with some of the WELL strategies that include things potentially like there's treadmill desks that you can put a treadmill in front of your desk while you're on a conference call or while you're working. Those really do exist. You can buy them. And things like bicycle desks and things like that can apply to the WELL credits, but mostly WELL is encouraging providing the opportunity for exercise, not specifically what it is. So there might be an exercise class that's given in the building or held by that the building owner or the company owner provides access to for everyone, but not you should do a specific exercise while you're sitting at your desk. Mm-hmm. I do have some information on that separately if you want it.
Sure, yeah, we'd be happy to share it with our members, and I'd be interested in seeing it. Chip, perhaps you want to come back. You may have a question or two yourself. Give them a chance to unmute and come back on camera.
Yeah. I'll unmute myself, which isn't always a good idea. I was just, what's the trajectory?
And I'll leave
it. What's the trajectory of the WELL standard being adopted? It seemed to take, and it bothered me a little bit, frankly, that LEED was 20 years ago. I kind of remembered it as the new thing, and all of a sudden it's no longer new. But what do you think the trajectory of this is, given the current circumstances and where we are? Do you have any idea?
Well, it was starting to get some good traction. I'd have to go back to the first slide. I don't remember what the exact number was, but millions of square feet internationally, worldwide, are adopting WELL strategies, whether they're in the process or they're already WELL certified. There's a lot internationally that's been adopting it, but it was slowly gaining traction. And I think more hitting the mainstream of the real estate industry. They were really getting there. There was a lot of talk about it. They were actually going to have their first conference in April. I believe it was April or May. That got canceled. But it was getting to that point where there are enough people to get together and have a conference and things like that. But the whole COVID-19 situation has really accelerated it. Everyone's talking about health and well-being and wellness in the workplace. So I think it's going to get a lot more traction now in a steeper track than it was before.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. And again, the principles can be adopted to all sorts of buildings, and depending upon and even an individual tenant's commitment to those principles, which make all the sense in the world to take care of their employees, it should be something that certainly does take off. I think, Erica, you did a really great job of giving us comprehensive information and doing it very succinctly. I feel like I'm much better educated than I was at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So thank you very much for sharing with us this afternoon. And we look forward to having you and your colleagues back in Newark very soon.
Yes.
So we want to thank you all. Again, thanks to Erica for sharing, and thank you for joining us, spending some time with us and learning about something else that you should be aware of that's relevant no matter what the time, but certainly relevant these days as far as creating a good environment for employees. So we look forward to seeing you perhaps at our happy hour tomorrow or next Thursday, and our next Tuesday, our Nexus Networking with Peter Brosnick from SJP Properties, and as well as our webinar on, and the full title is Generating Cash and Reducing Your Taxes. So that's something that everybody ought to be interested in. We look forward to sharing that with you next Wednesday. So with that, everyone be well. Erica, thank you once again. We look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Okay.